to observe humans, but I survived only because of them HFY Sci-Fi stories. The first thing I told the council was the truth no one wanted to hear. The humans are insane. Not careless, not suicidal. Insane in the way stars insist on burning until there's nothing left to give. Brighter, hotter, alive against all arithmetic. The chamber went silent. Stone tears. Metal rails cool under my palms. Elders leaned forward, frills tight, eyes catching the faint shimmer of my breath. Tradition demanded a tidy report. What I carried back refused to fit inside tidy. "You sent me to observe," I began. "To take notes. To remain outside the blast radius of their choices." My voice wavered and steadied. I could still feel the tremor through plating, the bite of alarms in my bones, the taste of scorched air that clung long after the smoke cleared. I spoke of arrival, of uniforms worn thin by use, of ships that looked built to be hit and keep moving. I spoke of a commander whose calm felt less like comfort and more like gravity. I did not give them his speeches, I gave them his eyes. One elder clicked for precision. Methods, discipline, outcomes. "You want mechanisms," I said. "I found a species that behaves like a formation even before anyone calls it one. They do not wait to be brave. They start there and work backward to a plan." A ripple of unease moved through the tiers. Someone asked whether I had been compromised. By proximity, by fear, by awe, I let the accusation pass. The record will show only what happened. This was supposed to be a training escort. It became a lesson in how people choose to stand when running would be easier. If the council requires proof, then hear it in the order I lived it. Beginning with the day I stepped aboard their flagship and learned what they mean when they say, "together." I was never meant to fight beside them. My orders were simple. Accompany, observe, return with a report. A training world was the destination. Nothing more dangerous than drills, schedules, and lectures. But when their ships broke slipstream into view, I understood how wrong that assumption was. They did not gleam like ours. Their hulls bore scars of other battles, patched seams, paint scorched and darkened by fire. Yet they moved as if the void itself had no say in whether they survived it. Bruised ships that looked unbreakable. At their head sailed the Roots, scarred, proud, its lines blunt instead of elegant. I remember the platform airlock opening, heat spilling around us. My companion stiffened. Jalin, thin and lavender-skinned, adjusting his breathing regulator again and again. Tariq, broader, bronze patterns on his carapace tight with tension. Both stood behind me as the human commander appeared. Anthony Rogers. Taller than I expected. Hair streaked gray at the edges, but his gaze sharp as a blade. He smiled. Not the fragile kind, but the kind that bends walls out of the way. He extended a hand. A human ritual. Physical trust, pressed skin to skin. I hesitated, then returned it. His grip was steady, warm, entirely certain. This is how they disarm you, I thought. With gestures too small to refuse. Behind me, our high speaker leaned close, frills brushing my shoulder. "Watch everything," he whispered. "Learn what makes them different." And so I stepped aboard the Roots. The air was warmer, alive with motion. Humans moved at speed, uniforms plain, voices clipped. They didn't wait for orders, they anticipated them. Nods, half smiles, a touch to a shoulder. Every corridor felt like part of one living body, constantly in motion. It unsettled me. Rogers himself came to our quarters as if his schedule had no weight. "Comfortable enough?" he asked. I told him the truth. Efficient. He laughed, low and practiced. "Partnerships aren't built on paper," he said, "they're built out here." Then the Roots jumped into slipstream. Space bent into rivers of light. My claws gripped the seat harder than I meant to. Rogers sat as if he were on a quiet road beneath trees. He noticed, of course. They always notice. "You've never traveled with us before," he said. I admitted I had not. "Then watch. You'll see soon enough, stronger together." The phrase lodged in me. I did not yet understand what it meant. I was about to. The lesson arrived sooner than I wanted. Between one slipstream jump and the next, the roots jolted like a struck nerve. Alarms screamed red across the bridge. Consoles flared with data. My frills stiffened before my mind caught up. Multiple ships closing fast, the comms officer barked. Her name was Claire Chong, and she spoke with the precision of someone who had been interrupted before. Impact. The hull shuddered. Jalin stumbled, clutching his regulator as though its valves could protect him. Tariq braced against the deck with calm that looked like defiance. I gripped the armrest, claws clicking. So, on the monitors, shadows darted into view. Sleek vessels with jagged hulls painted in streaks of crimson. Predators. Are we being hunted? The thought escaped my mouth before I could stop it. Rogers didn't answer me. His gaze locked forward, jaw set. "Focus on their formation," he ordered. "They'll try to cut us off." What startled me was not his words, but the way the crew responded. No hesitation. No panic. They moved like limbs of a single body. Helm banking hard, shields flaring, gunners tracking lines of fire. Sparks burst across one console, smoke stung my eyes, but no one stopped. The enemy closed, their ship stabbing through the dark. Beams of molten light raked the void. Every instinct screamed retreat. Yet the humans tightened their formation instead. Ship shielding ship, one rolling where another exposed a flank, weaving a defense that looked like instinct but struck like design. The deck pitched violently. For a heartbeat, I thought we had been split open. But the formation held. Every vessel moved in rhythm, battered yet unbroken. Madness, I thought, pure madness. And then I realized they called it something else. Survival. Outside, fire lanced the dark. Inside, Rogers's voice cut like a hammer. "Cover ship 3, push starboard, keep us tight." Orders barked, obeyed, completed before I could process them. Jalin whispered, thin and terrified. They fight like they've lost their minds. Tariq growled back, or like they've done this 1,000 times. Neither of them were wrong. The quarry outnumbered us, but every assault collapsed against the humans' wall of motion. Their madness was not chaos, it was choreography. Shields burned, hulls sparked, yet not a single human ship broke apart. And as the red glow of alarms pulsed across my vision, one thought anchored itself in my chest. This was only the beginning. The alarms had only just faded when the next sound reached us. A sharp chirp from Claire's console. She froze, then her eyes widened. "Commander, distress call incoming." The words tightened the bridge like a noose. Rogers stepped closer, voice clipped. "Source?" "Station Zion," Claire replied. Her throat bobbed before she added the rest. "They're under attack." The name alone turned my blood cold. I had studied maps. Zion was not a warship. It was a hub, a lifeline, filled with civilians and soldiers alike, a place where trade and culture mingled. Fragile because it was not built to be tested. Claire's screen flickered. "Same ID signatures," she said, her tone sharp now. "The quarry. Multiple wings striking the station, calling for reinforcements. Priority red." We were the closest fleet. 2 jumps away. I felt my chest constrict. Surely even humans would hesitate. Surely logic demanded retreat. We had only survived the ambush by a margin. The fleet was scarred, shields thinned, crews exhausted. Returning to safety was the sane choice. But Rogers never even paused. He turned to his crew. To us, to the council that would one day listen to this testimony. and his words carried a weight I will never forget. You wanted to know how we think, then watch. Humans don't leave allies behind. I stared at him, frills trembling. His conviction was not theater. He meant it. Against every calculation, every instinct, he was about to hurl us into another firestorm. Engines flared. Orders rippled out across the battered fleet. Formation tightened again despite the scars. My claws dug into the armrest as the stars bent around us, hurling us toward Zion. The first ambush, I thought, had been the lesson. I was wrong. It was only the invitation. Zion filled the viewport like a wound in the dark. Its vast rings glowed with fire, defense turrets spitting desperate volleys into the swarm of crimson-painted raiders clawing at its hull. Whole sections burned, atmosphere spilling in glittering plumes. The station trembled, alive only because humans aboard it refused to let it die. The fleet dropped from slipstream, battered but unbroken. Panels still smoked, weld marks raw along their hulls. Yet they surged forward without hesitation. Roger's voice carried across the bridge. Priority is the station. Nothing gets past us. I could not look away. The Kori were everywhere. Sleek, needle-shaped vessels darting like blades, weaving through Zion's defenses with predatory grace. Explosions dotted the void. Human ships dove into the chaos, formation shifting to shield the station's exposed flank. Their scarred hulls took the first blows meant for civilians. The deck lurched. Consoles spat sparks. Claire shouted damage reports while Hugo Doran, the pilot, dragged the roots into roll so violent my vision blurred. The emissary in me, the one sworn to observe, clicked in disbelief. Why put themselves in the path? Why bleed for strangers? Rogers didn't look at me. His eyes never left the fire ahead. Because the people on that station don't get another chance if we fail. It wasn't an explanation. It was a sentence carved in iron. Around us, human ships fought like fragments of one mind. The Neo and Trinity split wide, drawing fire. The Morpheus cut across the Raiders' flank. Each movement cost them scars, but none broke. Their unity was terrifying. Jalin whimpered beside me, his regulator clicking with panic. Tariq braced him upright, mandibles set. My claws scraped the armrest, the truth hammering itself into me. These humans didn't see survival as enough. They sought something larger. And Zion, still burning, was proof of what that larger thing demanded. The station shook like a dying beast. Fire trailed across its rings, panels collapsed inward, and every corridor we passed screamed with alarms. Civilians ran under thermal blankets, medics shoved stretchers through smoke, and still the enemy pressed. Then the blast hit too close. The deck bucked. Metal shrieked, and a section of the bulkhead split open. Shards of steel and fire cascaded through the corridor. Jalin, the frailest of us, cried out as a jagged fragment tore across his side. His lavender skin split, regulator sparking, blood seeping through trembling claws. I lunged toward him, but another impact threw me back. Above us, the ceiling gave way. Plates sagged, cracking, ready to collapse. I saw it coming. I knew I was too far. And then a blur crossed my vision. A human soldier, broad-shouldered, uniform torn, vest scorched with ash, hurled himself across the floor. No hesitation, no calculation. He covered Jalin's body with his own just as the corridor came down. Shards hammered his back, flames licked his arms. He grunted, teeth clenched, but he did not move. His body became the shield my companion didn't have. I froze. My frills quivered. My chest clicked in disbelief. He did not know Jalin. He owed him nothing. Alien blood meant nothing to him, and still, he risked everything. When the barrage eased, medics swarmed in. They dragged both out of the wreckage. The human coughed, blood at his lips, but rasped only one order. Check him first. Jalin, not himself. I stood rooted, claws trembling, as realization struck harder than any blast outside. Humans did not sacrifice only for kin, not only for comrades, not only for their own species. They did it for anyone. Madness. Beautiful, impossible madness. And I knew then that my report would never make sense to the Council. The battle should have been lost. Human ships bled fire across the void, shields cracked and sputtering. The Kori pressed harder, their flagship cutting through the chaos like a blade toward the heart of Zion. Every calculation said the station would fall. And then Rogers did something I could not comprehend. He ordered the routes forward, alone. I felt the deck lurch as our engine screamed to full burn. We broke formation, charging straight into the enemy's teeth. The Kori's flagship loomed ahead, armored, massive, bristling with weapons. Has he lost his mind? Jalin gasped, voice thin through pain. Perhaps, but madness was always the answer with humans. Enemy fire raked the routes. Hull plating shattered. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Smoke choked the bridge. And yet Rogers stood calm, giving orders that sounded less like commands and more like inevitabilities. Angle us 10 degrees. Make them think we're braking. Hold shields front. Let them chase. The Kori flagship surged closer, hungry for the kill. Their captains must have tasted victory already. But Rogers wasn't retreating. He was luring. My eyes darted to the tactical display, and then I saw it. The line of fire, the arc, the narrow corridor between us and the burning station. A weapon, massive and half-forgotten, hidden in Zion's spine. A cannon. Zion's ancient planetary defense cannon. Offline for decades, but now powered, primed, waiting. The Kori flagship followed us into position, exactly where Rogers wanted them. "Lock in," he said, voice even. And then, softer, words I will never forget. Then I burn. Not the station, not the people inside. The command went out. Light tore the dark in half. Zion's cannon fired with the fury of a star, a beam so bright it seared the void clean. The Kori flagship never even had time to scream. Its armor peeled, shattered, and dissolved in one blinding instant. When my vision cleared, nothing remained but fragments drifting in silence. The bridge fell still. For one breath, no one moved. Then cheers erupted, fists struck consoles, voices broke into ragged relief. But Rogers didn't smile. His shoulders sagged, his gaze heavy as if victory was never the point. It was only survival, only the chance for others to live. And in that silence I realized his trap hadn't just saved a station, it had ensnared me too. The silence after battle is never silent. Zion groaned around us, its vast rings still bleeding smoke into the void. Alarms wailed faintly in distant corridors, punctuated by the hiss of ruptured lines and the crackle of scorched wiring. The air smelled of metal and ash. Humans did not celebrate. They moved. Medics swarmed the injured, dragging stretchers through corridors still glowing with heat. Engineers clambered over shattered panels, sparks dancing from their tools. Soldiers, exhausted and bruised, lifted debris with bare hands just to clear a path for the civilians. There were no orders now, only instinct. They worked as though survival was never the finish line but the opening act. I walked through the wreckage in a daze. Jalin moved beside me, his regulator patched, his side bound in temporary seals. He limped, but he lived, because of a human soldier who had given his own body as a shield. Every step reminded me of that moment. Every echo of boots against steel pressed the truth deeper. At one breach point I stopped. 2 human children huddled under a blanket, eyes wide, their small hands clinging to a medic's sleeve. Behind them, a soldier leaned against the wall, blood seeping through bandages, refusing a stretcher until every civilian in his sight had been evacuated. He caught my stare and nodded once as if to say, "This is normal." It was not normal, not to me, not to any council elder who would later hear my words, but to him, to all of them, it was as natural as breath. The humans did not linger on triumph. They patched, lifted, built, carried. Every scar on Zion became a reason to move faster, not a reason to despair. And as I watched them weave through smoke and ruin, I understood. Victory was not an ending. For them, it was only proof that more lives could be saved. The fleet limped home, but their course was not toward rest. 2 slipstream jumps later, the stars bent open to reveal a world below. Vast oceans, continents scarred with impact craters, skies alive with contrails of training flights. It was not a capital, not a fortress. It was a crucible. The humans called it a training ground. Our delegation was granted clearance to observe. From orbit, I saw sprawling complexes, towers surrounded by obstacle fields, orbital stations locked in mock duels above the atmosphere. On the surface, battalions drilled in endless formations, mud, sweat, and shouts echoing across the plains. But it wasn't the machines that seized me. It was their unity. Young recruits staggered under weighted packs, but hands reached out to haul them forward. Squads ran as one body, slowing their pace to match the weakest among them. Instructors barked, but beneath the sharpness was something else: pride. Every lesson demanded more than strength, it demanded loyalty. Beside me, Jalin whispered, still fragile in his bandages. They teach them to bleed together. He was right. In my own people's academies, excellence meant outpacing the rest. Here, excellence meant never leaving anyone behind. Even in training, their madness was evident. No soldier was allowed to fall alone. And I saw then that Zion's survival had not been a miracle. It was practice. Practice drilled into them from the moment they could carry a weapon, from the moment they could run, from the moment they were told they were part of something larger than themselves. The humans did not fight as individuals who happened to share a war. They fought as if their very identity was the collective. Strong, together, always together. I had thought Zion was the lesson, but here was the forge that made them what they were. The council chamber waited, silent as stone. Elders leaned forward on their rails, quills poised, expecting numbers, formations, casualty ratios. They wanted a ledger. I gave them none. "They are insane," I said again, my voice carrying across the tears. "Insane in ways our metrics cannot hold. They throw themselves into fire when retreat would preserve them. They bleed for strangers. They build unity out of scars. They fight wars as if the word alone does not exist." Whispers rippled through the chamber. An elder demanded proof. Statistics, victories, data. I shook my head. What I witnessed was not arithmetic. It was choice. Again and again, humans chose the path that made no sense to us, and by doing so, they survived the impossible. I let the silence breathe. Let them see the tremor in my hands. Let them feel the weight of what could not be quantified. They are dangerous, they are unpredictable, and they are the best allies we could ever hope for. The hall stilled. No one moved. For the first time in my service, I saw elders afraid not of enemies, but of what it meant to stand beside such madness. I left them with only this: if the future demands we stand or fall, I know who I want beside me when the darkness comes. The humans. Always the humans. And that, council or not, is the truth I carried back. If you've traveled with me through this tale of madness and loyalty, then you already know. Humans are never just survivors. They are the storm. This was HFY Stories Pulse. If the story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these journeys alive and brings more tales of humanity's defiance against the dark. Thank you for listening, and remember, the stars are brighter with humans in the fight.